I was using the book as an authority and a credibility piece. And as we started to get opportunities, and it ended up, I was on 60 Minutes, all the TV channels, ABC across the country. In the first 12 months, AG, there was 48 different media appearances, so just about one a week. The book is not a product, it's a platform. And if you use that platform and you keep using that platform and you just leverage it at every possible opportunity, it'll be amazing how much you will transform your business and transform your life if you keep following it through.
Well, hello there, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the Business of Being an Author podcast. And as seems to be a little bit of a theme here, I'm working my way through my dearest and closest authory kind of friends, and the show's got to end when I've run out of people that I love to talk with, and that's it. We're going to call it a day. And today is absolutely. The shining star for me is Mr. Bushy Martin. How are you, Bushy?
Very much better for being here in your presence, mate. I've been looking forward to this chat for quite some time. And as a fellow book nerd, any excuse to be talking anything about books and the business that falls out of them is a good excuse for me.
Oh, thank you, Bushy. And we're going to talk about a few things. Bushy gave me this magnificent book, the Freedom Formula. I'm sorry, I've got clearly I've got the daylight of Tasmania shining in there. It's a fabulous, fabulous book. And that's really how I got to know you, Bushy, through working with you, helping you around coaching, just, during that, the KPI program, from, a number of years ago. But since then, during that time, I really got to know you really well. And, I know you and your beautiful wife, Sonia. I know that you used to be an architect. You now are all about money and freedom, and you do that in such an extraordinary kind of way, property, etc. And I'll let you explain that a little bit more. But the part of me that I'm always kind of drawn to is the fact that you have got an incredible heart, and you and Sonia you rehome Samoyed dogs, and you've had many of them, and all of the love and the sadness that comes with doing that, which is such a mark of a human being. You doing that. You're an amazing pianist as well.
Got to be careful how you say that too, AJ.
I think I got that one out right. So you're a guy of lots of different layers, and but most of all is you're 100% authentic and genuine. An extraordinary man, and I have a huge amount of respect for you, Bushy, and so thank you for coming onto the show. So let's talk about this. We met, I guess it must have been about 10 years ago, roughly, I guess. It was about then. And you had, were you doing the same kind of work? You'd been in this space, like in the investment space and property space for people, for a long time before then?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, AG. Like many people, I started as an architect, as you mentioned, and had my early life crisis. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis because I always like to be at the front end of those things. But life's really been in two halves, AG. I call it BC and AD. So before the crisis and after the divorce is pretty much how the life is run. And I had a bit of a penny drop moment it was in my early 30s when that occurred. And I was lucky enough to rub shoulders with Sonia not too long after that. And that was a unison made in heaven, thank heavens, because with her heart and my head, it's a pretty powerful combination. And we're joined at the hip. Basically, we do pretty much everything together. She's the best sounding board that I've ever come across. But when we got together, we were both on the bones of our backside. We had nothing, literally zero, AG. And it was a start again, ground zero moment for both of us. So we cottoned on to a few things and realised that if we're really going to enjoy lifestyle, because lifestyle is the most important thing to us, and having the freedom to give to others without ever expecting anything in return. And the work we do with rescue dogs is a big part of that, obviously. Also the fact that, as you would know, that a lot of dogs are better than a lot of humans too, just quietly, but that's an aside.
I agree. Yep.
So we sort of came across an approach to life that's really about making sure in a position where we could fund our lifestyle without us physically having to do too much of the production. So if you sort of boiled that down into a simple exercise, everything that we did and invested our time in from a business perspective had to produce an income that didn't require us. It had to grow in value and it had to be resaleable at some point. So we started a property management business, would you believe? So I went from architect to property manager. We then realised that because property has always been a big theme in both of our lives. Actually, Sonia's dad used to be involved in real estate. So we built that arm. Then we got into finance broking because if you can't get the money, you can't continue to invest in property. And then out of that came the current process. So the property's been very generous to Sonia and I. But when I got into the broking space, I was like a lot of people, a small business, working locally, working extremely long hours. I felt I had a message that was better than the neighbourhood and would be more attuned to the nation in that perspective, and started to think, well, how can we get this message out there? And that's where I was absolutely fortunate enough to rub shoulders with you. And I'll never forget this, AG. The very first time I met you at the KPI exercise, you said, made a very prophetic statement which has affected everything I've done since. And that is that there's only three things that you need to worry about, and that's leverage, leverage, and leverage. And coming from a property perspective where everything's about exponential growth, then that really, really hit home. It was a real aha moment for me. So before I'd even started thinking about the Freedom Formula or the Get Invested book that I then ended up scripting, that seed had been sown. So even before the book was written, or I'd even picked up a pen to start even putting some notes down, I started calling myself an author and promoting myself of an author of the upcoming book, The Freedom Formula. And that got me speaking gigs, it got me some MC gigs, because that credibility factor that came with it meant that I was ahead of someone else who's just someone saying how good they are. So I guess, pre-book and post-book is where all the action happened. So I was already positioning myself. And Sonia and I, you've talked to, our real focus is lifestyle. So lifestyle affects everything that we do, both for ourselves, for our team, and the people that we help. And that's the really underlying theme. So really what we do is we help people to achieve whatever version of lifestyle you want to live, using property as the vehicle that's going to help fund that. So that's really the undertone. And the book is what we did pre the book and what I've done post the book, thanks to your guidance and counsel, has been life-changing as a result.
So tell me that. What have you done with the book, mate? Like, how have you used it? Like, we all know to get this and, to create a big piece like this, and the Freedom Formula, as an idea and as a concept, tells you what, that this book is about. It's great. It's a magnificent book. How have you actually the book's arrived, what did you do with them? How did you make it, that leverage piece?
Yeah, a whole bunch of different things. And it's funny, activity breeds activity, which creates success, I think, because it all feeds on itself progressively over time. And when we started, I would just, and I think I sent one to you, a copy of the book in a beautifully packaged case with some chocolate and a personal note, thanking you for the words of wisdom that you'd guide me with. Well, I did a similar thing, but I sent it to every journalist that I could possibly. So I was looking at Source Bottle and getting names and contacts, and I was just pumping it out there to all and sundry with a list of topics around areas that I know that they will be interested in. So I was really using the book as an authority and a credibility piece, but also talking to things that were of interest to them. And it's as you've said to me, I don't know how many times, we're about solving someone's problem. So if we know what their problem is and we hint at what the solution's going to be, they're more likely to want to have a chat to you. So we made a big thing of these boxes. They were beautifully wrapped. I knew that if it was Channel 9 or News Limited, then it would be brought in and everyone would be standing around looking at them going, what have you got there? So it's creating this awareness piece that really started to build the interest. And as we started to get opportunities, and I mean, it ended up, I was on 60 Minutes, all the TV channels. We ended up on ABC across the country. I think I had, in the first 12 months, AG, there was 48 different media appearances. So just about one a week as a result of that activity. And
I mean, sorry, mate, I've got to interrupt you there for a second. That is just something that I just love and adore. You know, like that's, you know, we talk about having the book and using it to create leverage, you know, and to, you know, one of the big things I talk a lot about is media. And, you know, that's such a prime example to me of doing what others won't do. You know, most people will kind of, I don't know, they struggle. It's not that hard to find media contacts. It's not that hard to find producers of shows. It's not that hard to find who runs the biggest podcast these days or who the editor of the Sunday Mail is in Queensland. It's actually pretty darn easy to find these things because I did similar things before I knew what PR kind of companies were. I would send it to people. I would send it to I'd send 2 copies to everyone so that the editor could have it and give another copy to another person. That's how I got all of my early media. And I didn't think anyone else kind of went to that extreme. So I remember you telling me about it, but I'd kind of forgotten. Like anyone who is watching or listening to this, that's how you get 48, you know, major kind of media gigs. You've got to have a good book. You know, they're not dumb. You know, if it's a crappy book, you know, it's not world class. They're not going to put you on 60 Minutes. They're not going to get you to do stuff. So you always got to have that great book. But I just love the fact that you did that.
Well, and it comes back to you, Mo. I remember you telling me that if you're on a plane or you're on a bus or a train, you would have a copy of your book in your hand, and you'd normally give one away. And I was like, okay, let's take that on board. And I did that as well, by the way. I'd always have a copy of the book with me so that we were handing it out to all and sundry. But I also, in the pack that I would send, I said, if this book's not of interest to you, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So give it to someone else in your team or your friends or your family that might get some benefit from it. And then in itself, that sort of cascading ripple effect, it was incredible, actually. I was amazed at, and when it started off slowly, like they all do, and then exponentially, just all of a sudden this wave of activity started interacting across each other. And I could use one appearance to reference to another, and that created another. And I guess I appeared on a lot of podcasts, and there weren't too many podcasts around those days, actually. But the idea came to me that, okay, well, if I want to create consistency in what we're doing, because that I think the big thing with all of this, AG, is the consistency of the effort. So it's a launch is great, and it's let's be honest, if you've written a book and you've written, how many are you up to, 16 or 17?
17-ish.
17, good grief. It's a lot of blood, sweat and tears in that exercise. So I understand the benefit of having a launch as almost a whew, we got through that. Hey, let's celebrate. We didn't do much on the launch exercise. I actually put that money to good use in terms of marketing the book. It was like, okay, do I slap myself on the back and tell everyone else how good I am by having a show and a few drinks? Or do we put that money and energy into things that are going to create future opportunity for us? So
and that though is being really strategic about it. And I say to people, look, do a launch as a, you know, line in the sand and all the rest of it. And that's the main reason I encourage people to do that, is to get them to psychologically start the leveraging process, and et cetera. And so, you know, you got it. You were already going, well, rather than spend $5,000 putting on some hot dogs and some beers, we're actually going to, you know, we'll use that to start our marketing campaign. So there isn't a right or a wrong from my point of view, as long as you've got a strategy, you know, and again, I love your media strategy. What else did you do, Bushy, with the book?
Yeah, so the book really became the beating heart of an ecosystem that we created around it. So what I love about if you're writing books, what the book was great for was really distilling what our message was, And I got much better at that because I'd gone through the blood, sweat and tears of doing it, and created, again, following your lead, created a number of frameworks, which we still use today, to communicate it. And that created a whole heap of other content. So most of the early podcasts I did on Get Invested in the Property Hub were straight out of the book. Then I would get guests to try and interact with that to make that happen. We created a whole heap of tools that came out of the book that we had as giveaways. So, because like any business, what we're doing is we're taking people through the know, like, trust journey. And property isn't about property; it's about trust. That's the game that we are in. There's so many sharks in the property industry that if you are genuine and you're authentic and you're sharing the truth and not the bollocks, then what happens is you start attracting the people that you want to live with. So and it became a great filter for us in that respect, because people would read the book and you don't read a book in 5 minutes. They'd read the book, they'd listen to the podcast, they'd heard my voice. So by the time they've read the book and they've listened to the podcast, and we've measured this, from the first time someone picked up a book or started listening to the podcast, it generally takes 18 months to 2 years before they pick up the phone and reach out to us. But by then, they're ready to do business. All the pre-qualification, everything else is done. They've had enough touch points with us through all of these call to action giveaways that came straight out of the book, by the way. So that created an amazing exercise. And I've actually produced 2 very high quality programs that have come out of the book as well. Again, straight out of the book. And they all refer to each other. There's a big a cobweb that's connecting them all. So one's referring to the other, and by the time you're immersed in that ecosystem, then if they're the right type of people who believe what we believe, then we're attracting great people and we're getting rid of the ones we don't want to work with anyway. And it becomes very enjoyable for them. It becomes a great experience for us, and it just perpetuates the ongoing message, AG. So it's.
And Stoff said it's not, by the time someone's ready to buy, they're ready to buy. Yeah, and it's clear you've just got to do that prelim to get that kind of, overcome the quieter piece. So you have a bit of that buzz that happens when you first launch something. But when you've got a bigger product like what you're selling, once you've got through that first 2 years then of also, like, now you have constantly leads coming, constant qualified people coming along because you've been doing it for a much longer period of time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I same thing. I mean, I've been sending out books for years. There's always people reaching out because of the work that you've done 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And it's like, it's self-perpetuating. It's the easiest marketing, I think, that I've probably ever done. You just got to play a long game. You got to be smart enough to play a long game, right?
100%. And that is the key piece. You don't build a relationship in 5 seconds. It takes, we know in our real life, you'll meet someone for the first time and you'll first 15 seconds, you'll decide whether you think they're worth having any further chats with. But by the time you get to trust them, that's taken a considerable amount of time generally. Well, it's no different with the book. So the other things that we did with the book, AG, yes, I got some keynotes out of it, but I'm a closet perfectionist, and I remember you spending 2.5 hours with me polishing a presentation a few years ago, all from the goodness of your heart, by the way, mate. And I'll never forget
Always
that.
Always a pleasure.
Never forget that. But where I felt more comfortable was emceeing. So I got a whole bunch of MC gigs. And why be an MC rather than a guest speaker? I'm on stage the whole day. Everyone gets to see me from start to finish. I don't have to do a lot of preparation. I just need to know who's coming on, what they're talking about, and then just sort of bring the energy to the space.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's a fabulous opportunity. And it's, you don't have to spend 3 months trying to prepare you to make a perfect keynote, right? So, and it still pays well.
Yeah, I had an excuse then to talk to every keynote speaker that's coming to the presentations. I got most of them on the podcast. I built relationships with them because ultimately this is all about building relationship. And if you link those all together, then it's enabled me to position myself in such a way that people, your name becomes associated with respect and trust. That's been the key piece. So the other things too, like having the benefit. I was fortunate enough to win a couple of awards in the very first ABBAs, the Australian Business Book Awards. And I'm not sure whether that was smart enough or dumb enough to then have me on as a judge beyond that, but I've loved the opportunity.
And well, I'll talk about the ABBAs in a second because you are a judge and you've been really, really active in that, and I just want to get your views on that. But before we dive into that, mate, tell me about your podcast. So how many episodes of that? How long did that? It's still running, right? You're still actively doing that?
Well, I was yes, absolutely. So it's been running now. There's 2 shows that I host. So there's the Get Invested podcast, which is the long form. And then there's Realty Talk, which I, again, through the book, got an interview with the host of Real Estate Talk and at Kevin Turner, who's been the longest running property show in the country. And we just connected. Once he got me on, we connected. And next thing you know, I'm hosting the show. So again, the book created that. It would never have been there without the book. And then he's sort of semi-retired now, so he stepped back and allowed me to drive that machine. But we're in the period. I've had over 1,000 interviews now. AG.
Really?
Yep.
Really? That's incredible.
And that's led to awards. So I got Property Mentor of the Year at one stage. And again, this ecosystem just starts to feed on itself. Eventually, I got listed in the top 10 property specialists in the country, and all of this from the catalyst that started with the book, every bit of it. So
that's amazing. But you've done the work. You've done the strategy around it. Like, that's incredible. 1,000 interviews, Bushy. Like, I had no idea how amazing you actually are. I had a clue. But like that takes a lot. This is again what I love, and one of my big messages around this is like you got to play a long game. You got to be strategic. You've got to, you're my poster child for this stuff, mate. You've got to have the right product ecosystem and the right product architecture. You've got to be prepared to invest, to send out to hundreds of media, with a book, and that's $5,000, maybe more.
It was 10 grand.
Time you
it was
do
10 grand.
10 grand, right?
Yep.
So you send out on the hope that it's going to work, but that's what it's about. And I think a really important piece of that, you gotta believe in your book. You got to know that you've written and published a world-class book. And if you don't believe that, I think then it kind of shows.
100%.
Yeah.
Because when I wrote that, and again, this is advice from you, I read every book on the subject, and I went into every bookshop and looked at every book on the shelf to see how mine would stand out and differentiate from each and every other one. And I was very confident by the time I'd written the book that it had a message that no other book on achieving lifestyle through property had. Because it was all about the dollars and the spreadsheets, and we brought the heart into this space, because it is ultimately about that. Property is just a vehicle. It's all about lifestyle at the end of the day, and that's really where we focus that energy. And by creating that differentiator, then that is really, it's given it its long life. And the one thing I would say, reinforcing the point you've just made there, AG, is that don't expect instant results with any of this. Because it is an exponential curve. You'll see very little early on, but just have the belief, keep plugging away, and eventually it'll start to take off, and it will start to feed on itself. It becomes a self-perpetuating flywheel if you just keep at it for long enough.
I think that's one of the challenges that I see, Bushy, is a lot of people who have written really great books, and I look at them and go, "This is a great book. It's differentiated. It's needed. It makes sense. All that kind of stuff." And they do the launch, they kind of a couple of months worth of marketing or, a little bit of leveraging, but they just stop, and you kind of go, wow, and they go, oh, what did your book do? And how did your book go? And they go, oh, it didn't really do much for me. And my question's always, well, what did you do for it? It's a tool. It's like any kind of tool, whether it be a hammer or a computer, or AI or whatever it might be, or a piano. It's nothing unless you actually utilize it. And I think that's that point you made earlier when I was all about leverage, and I use that line that I work to leverage my books every single day of every single week, of every single month, of every single year, of every single decade. And I know that sounds kind of cutesy and all the rest of it, but it is the reason why I've been successful as an author. It's why you've been successful as an author. And if I look at any of the people that I know who I'd go, well, they're successful as an author, it's because the book is the first part of everything that they do. And even years after the books come out, they haven't stopped. You know, they just keep doing that. And I think that's what I see you being a great illustration of that, mate.
Yeah, I love it. It's interesting. I reread the book over Christmas because I'm going to do an updated version. Things have changed in the 8 or so years since it's been written. The fundamentals are still right, but I've refined the message since then too. By the way, as you do.
Yeah, right.
So it's right for an update. And I guess I'm at a point now where, because we get 120,000 people a week listening to the podcast across the country, because it's now syndicated through the Southern Cross Stereo Network and the Listener platform. So it's got a really good loyal audience that's been developed, and it's just been as I say, a self-feeding machine around that, to the point where it keeps our team busy. If I refer to one of your other books. You might as well be the most expensive. Again, we've taken on that philosophy as well. We position ourselves as a specialist, and therefore we've got a wait list. We're oversubscribed. It means that we are able to cull out the people that we don't really think we are aligned to, and vice versa. So from that lifestyle perspective, which what it was all about, Sonia and my vision from day one was to create a lifestyle boutique business that was geographically independent, which basically is a word for we can work anywhere at any time. Our team is right across the country, and our clients are right across the country. So it enables us to travel as we love to do. And now I'm really fortunate. Again, I've got to thank you for this, AG, because the book has been the foundation of every part of this. I now just do the bits I like. So I talking to you, hosting the podcast, meeting people. I do some strategy sessions with people at the high level. We've then got the rest of the team to look after the nuts and bolts, and that gives us the freedom to we travel 3 months of the year. Love going to different places, both within Australia and elsewhere, and life couldn't be better, mate. And I went from that 7-day-a-week workaholic finance broker, relying on I was only as good as my last referral, to people are now coming to us, and we're deciding when we want to work with them. Mate. It's flipped the lid in terms of the whole exercise, and all of that was due to writing the book and then leveraging the book.
Oh, mate, that's it makes me so happy to hear that. And I mean, I knew part of it, but we probably haven't really sat down and had a conversation from end to end like this, about it. And because sometimes for me, Bushy, it's like, I live, eat and breathe books, and that's my more and more, that's what I do, the majority of my stuff. And sometimes you think, you're blowing into the wind kind of thing. And do people get it? Does it, do they appreciate it? So when you have really success stories like yourself, it's so refreshing for me. And it's so, I don't know, it's so reinforcing of the concept. And this is, my new book is exactly what we're talking about, Bushy. And it's like, I should have had this conversation with you before I wrote the book, actually, now that I think about it, but I'm pleased that it's on track. Now, I'm just aware of the time. I don't want to chew up too much of your time, because you've probably got other podcasts and all this media stuff to do. And, I understand. But you mentioned you got you're going to do a new updated edition. My ears prick up when I hear that, because I love to hear that. And you're right? It's 8 years. It's probably due. And that point that you made there about, how you do what you do is refined. The underlying stuff is solid, but there's some refining of frameworks, maybe a couple of new frameworks, or you've got, how many conversations have you had around the Freedom Formula, in the last 8 years and all the rest of it? So it makes sense to do an updated edition. Do you know yet what that's going to look like for you?
Yeah. So as you know, when I wrote the Freedom Formula, again, this is part of the thinking, and really moving from the author thinking to the architect thinking, because you mentioned a really key thing, and that is the strategy behind it. So if you get clear on your strategy before you even pick up the pen, on how what the end game is going to look like and what you need to make that happen, then all of a sudden this takes a different shape. So I actually peeled off. So the Freedom Formula is written in 3 sections. The first section I actually peeled off as a separate standalone book, and it neatly fitted into that. And it was the inspiration piece to really get people to think about, well, should you be investing in your financial future, and what are the options to do that? But I married that with the prequel, if you like, was really, I called it Get Invested because it marries with the podcast, so that there's some reinforcement through that. And I guess as we move into Freedom Formula 2.0, then there are some new frameworks that have come into play. So, I've sort of over those 1,000 interviews, I've come to know that sustainable success lies at the intersection of self, health, and wealth. And what a lot of us do is we chase the wealth bit. We don't spend much time on the self, which is what's between our ears, and as importantly, our health. So you might have the money, but you're in no position to enjoy it because your body collapses. And I saw my old man do that. So there's an ability to integrate the wealth piece with the essential foundations of the self and the health, which will become another important part of the book because it sort of broadens that. And out of the 1,000 odd interviews I've had, there's some gold that's been distilled during those conversations that it's going to feed beautifully into the book. So the content's almost written by itself in that regard.
Wow. And the credibility of the updated, are you still going to call it the Freedom Formula?
Yeah, I think so. I'll be talking to you by the time I get to that point, but
for
probably
sure.
Yes.
Because it's interesting, because it is a topic, isn't it, that's, again, one of those kind of books that you would look at and go, it's like leadership books. There's a lot of books on leadership, and yours has got to be distinctive and stand out. There's more and more books now around money in particular, and that concept being you've got to have that point of difference, which you nailed back then. So doing the updated edition now, when you look at it and go, I can just imagine being able to say, well, this has been updated after 1,000 one-to-one interviews. Like you go credibility on top of credibility, 100 media interviews, all of this. And, that to me that's when you get even more leverageability with your book. You turn what was a great leveraging tool into something even stronger and even more. And I think sometimes people are a little bit too quick to write the next book, and they move on before they've actually kind of really utilized your existing one. And I think that in many instances, Bushy, an updated edition can almost be more powerful than a new book. Depending, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree, because you are leveraging off some established credibility. And I may even take the twist, a bit like Malcolm Gladwell did with Revenge of the Tipping Point. Because he wanted to challenge himself to look at his initial book and say, well, what didn't prove to be true and what's different? I may take a similar approach. So I might be Revenge of the Freedom Formula or something along those lines that's adding something new to the conversation.
Yeah, great. Because it's still got to have that currency, doesn't it? It's got to be, and if it's going to be an updated edition, it's got to be this is 2026 talk now. And anything, I think that's starting to change a little bit now. Anything pre-20, even pre-COVID almost now, is starting to feel a little bit dated in some respects, and before we look at a book and go, 10 years, it's still okay. Now we look 2 or 3 years. That's why I'm kind of suggesting we do updated editions more frequently. Certainly I'm going to do an updated edition. Someone's got to be the most expensive, probably next year, for the same reason. When it's got legs, it's got plenty of life, and you've actually learned a lot for the next part of it and the next part of your business model, to be able to say, okay, well, I want to do now this, and this. I need to do an updated edition to help me sell, position, do all of that. Whew, okay, great. Now, we've almost run out of time. And this should have been a 12-hour podcast interview. I just want to go back and ask you just briefly, I guess, mate. As I said, we spoke about the Australian Business Book Awards. I'm a co-founder of the Australian Business Book Awards along with Michael Hanrahan, and you've really been involved since day one, Bushy, in terms of initially entering the awards and winning in category, I believe.
Two actually.
Two categories.
Yep. Personal investment and the marketing thereof. Because as I probably just described, I guess I went bunter on the marketing exercise and
exactly. That's right. Yeah, of course. That was a lot of books ago, wasn't it? And that was almost 8 years ago as well. So on those funny times. But now you're still involved in the ABBAs. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Australian Business Book Awards are really for non-fiction books, because we started them because we felt that there was a need for a really specific kind of award there. And now, as we're saying, they're in their 8th year. Not for profit. Any excess funds donated to the Indigenous Literacy Foundation. It's an amazing kind of thing to be a part of. And Bushy is one of the very generous judges. You come to our shortlisting day, etc. And you know, the awards wouldn't happen without people like Bushy giving up a lot of their time to then go away and judge a whole pile of books as well. So now we love it and we're book nerds, but it's a time-consuming thing, and we never take that for granted, how much goes into it, Bushy, with our wonderful judges. But the question I want to ask you around that is, what impact do you think having an awards for business books for Australian authors, what impact do you think that actually has on the writing industry or the author industry in our country?
Major, I think, actually, because I've actually seen it. I get to see this from a couple of sides now, AG, and having, because when I'm interviewing people and if they've written a book, because I tend to focus on a lot of guests who are authors. For obvious reasons, I'm a book nerd myself, so it gives me an excuse to read their book before I interview them. But they're actively talking about it now. So I think it's really lifted the bar in terms of the credibility that's associated with writing a business book. And people are now actively using the awards to build their own credibility. Because you know it's another notch on the belt in terms of achievement as far as that's concerned,
and leverageability, you know,
totally, and again, it gives you another excuse to have another conversation about your book. So the more of those that there are, the better. But I just think overall, and if I look at what the quality of the books were like early on to what they are now, there's been a very clear lift in the standards, 100%. So we're getting much better quality books from every aspect. We're getting more interest in business books as a consequence of that, and it's getting talked about more. So in a world where, you know, if you believe some of the influencer gurus from some years back, books were dead, well, they're alive and well and thriving. There's no question about it. And I think the again, as a self-professed book nerd, there's nothing beats the quiet, reflective nature of sitting with a cup of coffee and reading someone's book and just absorbing it and taking it on board. There's so much noise out there in our current world that just having that point of reflection and meditation almost that's associated with book reading, you just can't beat it. So I think, given that context, I think the health of books is very strong, and I think the ABBAs as a primary means to have the recognition and the promotion behind that, both in terms of lifting the quality of the books that we are reading, but also the awareness of those books that's out there. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, thank you. I agree, and that's why obviously we wanted to start them. But you know, they have become mainstream now, and I think, again, putting my business of being an author kind of hat on. Enter awards, you know, enter credible awards. There's a lot of awards out there. Do your due diligence. I think there are a lot of awards that are just money raising. They're businesses for people, and I query that at times. So do your homework. But if you win an award, then make damn sure that you leverage it. Make sure that you tell everyone. Make sure that you know, if your book, it's hard to win an award, particularly in something like the ABBAs. It's, you know, it's a difficult thing to become a finalist. It's a difficult thing to be a category winner. But, you know, if you do get it, then, you know, make sure that's, you tell everyone about it. It's, don't keep it a secret is probably the key kind of message, you know, the 2-part prong I would suggest for that.
100%, right down to having the award logo on the base of your email signature.
Absolutely.
So that people are just seeing
exactly.
it every day. Just the little things that you can fuse through the whole process to keep building that credibility and give you that edge over some of the competition. You can't beat it.
And it's such a competitive world that we're living in. And if we think it's competitive now, in 5 years, it's going to be twice as competitive. It's constant exponential growth of this competitiveness. And you kind of look, okay, well, I've got to have my point of difference. And, time and time again, we're coming back to this point of difference is a book is a significant point of difference. So, but of course it does nothing if you don't use it effectively, which is what we've spoken about for the last half an hour, my friend. Bushy, we'll wrap it up there, mate. I think we could talk for a long time. I suspect I'm going to ask you back at some stage, like once a week maybe. But thank you for sharing so succinctly as well how your world has evolved and some really great key messages that I'm such a believer of in terms of having the strategy, in terms of doing what other people won't. I love your media campaign. I love the fact that you are humble enough to say, look, I'm learning. The book taught me, clarified my thinking, all of those kind of things. Anyone who is listening to this or watching this again, exactly the stuff that Bush is saying. I don't prompt anyone to say anything on this podcast. I don't need to. There's no need. We just talk rubbish before we go on air and laugh and make fun of each other. So the messaging here is really genuine and from the heart, and it makes me immensely proud of you, Bushy, and what you're doing. And I mean that in such a loving way. You've done it, you've done the work, and it's kind of why I do what I do, I
love it, mate.
As well. So,
what they say, when the student's ready, the teacher arrives. You've been the best teacher ever, AG, in that context.
You,
and, I think the take home for anyone listening today is that the book is not a product, it's a platform. And if you use that platform and you keep using that platform and you just leverage it at every possible opportunity, it'll be amazing how much you will transform your business and transform your life if you keep following it through. So, again, I'm very thankful for, one, the opportunity to meet you and to have the ongoing contact and the guidance and counsel that you so freely give, AG, and the attention to detail that you bring to each and everything that you do, and most importantly, the level of care that you bring across to everyone that is lucky enough to be in your presence. I really want to thank you, mate, and really appreciate the opportunity to come on and share some of that today.
Thank you so much, Bushy. And folks, reach out to Bushy, bushymartin.com.au, I think, or is it just .com.au?
Yep.
I'll put the link in, do all of that stuff. I probably won't, but someone will, someone who's able to do that. I've got no attention to detail for stuff like that. But I have. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it, Bushy. And I encourage anyone to reach out, to, find out more about your other podcast shows. Reach out to Bushy, find the Freedom Formula, new edition coming soon. And, but buy the first one, then you can get the new edition, right? And you can work out what's been updated. It's what it's all about.
The first one will be a collector's item, mate. So,
it'll sell on eBay for $5,000 a pop. That'll be the best investment you ever make. Thanks very much, Bushy. Thanks, ladies and gents, for tuning in. Thank you very much for sticking around, and I hope you got great value out of this episode of the Business of Being an Author podcast. Now, I'd also like to say that, of course, there is a book out called The Business of Being an Author, and it's all about the things that we're covering on the podcast, and I think it's perfect for any of you who are aspiring authors ready to really leverage that book. If you'd like to know more about that, you can visit www.andrewgriffiths.com or www.theauthoracademy.com.au. We'll put contact details in the show notes, and I really look forward to your company on the next episode. If you've got an idea for an author that you'd like me to interview, reach out, drop us a line. Righto, folks. Thank you.